The Baker report on Iraq has generated more controversies than solutions. It didn't quite recommend a dash to the door, but it lit up the exit sign just in case. I'm Jassim Azzawi. This is Inside Iraq. The report recommended the Iraqi army and not US forces should do the heavy fighting. It said al-Maliki's government should be penalized for not meeting its challenges. And Baker urged President Bush to swallow his pride and seek solutions to talk to his enemies, Syria and Iran. Here is Ayman Muhyiddin.
It took 9 months and $1 million. Now these 10 members of the Iraq study group have come up with 79 recommendations. The group claims the suggestions can help improve the situation and get the U.S. out of Iraq. But the report paints a grim reality on the ground, saying the situation in Iraq is grave and deteriorating, and that no one can guarantee that any course of action at this point will stop the violence. And perhaps the most damning indictment that Iraq has spiraled out of control, the report says the ability of the United States to influence events within Iraq is diminishing. Despite its bleak assessment, the way forward, as the report is titled, recommends the Bush administration take the following key steps. 1. Reduce U.S. combat troops in Iraq by 2008 and embed more American trainers and advisors with Iraqi security forces. 2. Engage in direct talks about Iraq with its neighbors, particularly Iran and Syria. 3. Give the Iraqi government milestones to achieve if it wants continued U.S. and international support. And 4. The United States needs to re-engage in the Arab-Israeli peace process. The Bush administration is reserving judgment on the recommendations of the report, saying it will wait till other similar reports are completed before it announces any changes to its Iraq policy. In the meantime, some in Washington have already drawn initial conclusions and the likelihood of any changes in that policy.
If the United States government actually wanted to change the course, they will not go to someone like Baker to find the new course. They can actually put together a panel of Iraqi and American independent views who are out there shouting, screaming for the last years. And everyone is speaking about their initiatives and their work, but they were ignored systematically.
James Carfano, a member of the conservative think tank, the Heritage Foundation in Washington, was an advisor to the Iraq study group.
I don't think that, truthfully, in terms of the strategy on the ground, that a heck of a lot is going to change.
And some believe that's because the report was made for U.S. domestic political consumption rather than tangible change on the ground in Iraq.
The focus of the report is much more likely to be not how to put Iraq right, but how to put the U.S. right.
With time, it may appear that the Iraq study group has more impact on U.S. domestic politics than on any U.S. policy in Iraq. Ayman Muhyiddin, Al Jazeera, Washington.
We have a diverse lineup today. I'm joined from Baghdad by Ayad Samarra'i. He is Deputy Secretary General of the Iraqi Islamic Party. And from Damascus, Syria, by Dr. Buthaina Sha'ban, Minister of Expatriates. And from Washington, D.C., by Ambassador Martin Indyk, Director of the Sabban Center for Middle East Policy at the Brookings Institution. Welcome to Inside Iraq. Ambassador Mike Indyk, let me start with you. Many analysts believe the report came up rather short. Do you share their view?
Well, I think they had a very hard task in very difficult circumstances. And don't forget, this is a bipartisan report at a time when Republicans and Democrats have just come through an election in which they fought very hard over this question of Iraq. So I think they did a good job of building a consensus on an approach that, if it had been pursued 3 years ago, might have had a chance of working. Unfortunately, I think the reality has gone well beyond where the report's consensus is now, and that's going to be the problem.
Dr. Buthaina, I heard you a couple of times, you welcoming this report. Syria thought this is a very positive American report. Why is that? I would have thought there is an implicit criticism, if not an indictment, of Syria.
Well, I think the reason why we think the report is positive, although I quite agree with Martin that it has come at a time when it has the reality in Iraq. It has become very difficult, and perhaps it might prove very difficult to do anything about it. But at least the report thought about the region in a reasonable way, is trying to resume the policy of talking rather than the policy of alienating. It's trying to see Iraq as one country in the region influenced by everything that goes on in the region. It's trying to see the Middle East as a matrix where every country and everything affects every other thing, rather than the neocons who are trying to build walls and borders and deepen borders between Arab countries.
Ayad al-Samarra'i in Baghdad, the Iraqi government also welcomed this report. As a member of the opposition, what do you think? Has the report served its purpose, or events on the ground has taken everybody by surprise?
This report actually pointed out so many things which should be done, or the American administration should do in the future. And in general, I think about 80% of what was in the report, if is applied, will most probably will solve the problem.
To what extent do you believe the U.S. government is banking on the current government, al-Maliki, and whether he can deliver the recommendations of the Baker-Hamilton?
Well, I think that if the Bush administration can't get the Maliki government to take a more active role in building a national compact, a kind of consensus between Iraq's different political parties and ethnic and religious groupings, then the game is up. I fear it's already up, but unless the government can forge a political consensus, then there's very little that the United States can do, because we're already, I think, in a civil war in Iraq.
What makes the president, as well as the panel, that he's going to do it? You know, the leaked memo by Stephen Hadley says this man is incapable.
Well, I don't blame Prime Minister. I think he's got a really tough job. But that's where we're left. That's the reality, Justin. That's what we're left with. And I'm afraid that it's too late all around. But the administration is now kind of stuck in Iraq, and it has to decide between bad options. And the best of it, the bad options, is to remain committed to Maliki and try to give him a push to do the things and the support to do the things that might salvage the situation. I don't see that they have another alternative, and that's what the Baker-Hamilton group came up with as well.
The Baker-Hamilton recommended that the U.S. should talk to Syria. It hasn't done for a long time. They have demands on Syria. Dr. Abu Thayna,
Yeah.
One of the implicit criticism that Syria is being a staging post for money, for finance, for intelligence, and perhaps even harboring certain people that the United States is after. Is that a fair criticism?
You know, it really amuses me the way the U.S. administration is trying to distribute accusations right and left, as if the Iraqi people are responsible for what happened to them, as if the United States is exonerated from the occupation of Iraq, which is really the source of all the evil that we are seeing in Iraq, or blaming Syria for having people coming through the borders. And I'm really amused by even the Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi saying that the Iraqis should know that our patience is not unlimited. And I think it is one should really have some grace in saying that the reason for all the ethnic terrible fighting that we see in Iraq is the American occupation of Iraq.
Go ahead, Ambassador.
Look, talking, I agree that the Bush administration should be talking to Iran and Syria. But it's important to understand that talking is a tactic. It cannot be a strategy. And the question is whether there are now common interests, enough common interests, let's say, between the United States and Syria, to have that talk actually be productive. And that's where I'm very doubtful. The Baker-Hamilton report suggested that in order for those talks to be productive, Syria would have to stop interfering in Lebanon, drop its support for Hezbollah, and cut its supplying of arms to Hezbollah. It would have to stop its support for Hamas. It would have to pressure those organizations to stop their support for terrorism. This is part, and Baker has described this strategy as flipping Syria out of its alliance with Iran into an alliance with the United States. I don't think that Syria sees that its interests lie in doing all of those
Ambassador,
things.
we'll continue this line, but let me just get a quick response from Ayad Samarra'i. There is too much emphasis and too much has been placed on the Iraqi army in the next stage to do the heavy lifting and heavy fighting. In your opinion, is the Iraqi army capable to take command?
As the situation now, no, it is not. He can't do that job. It needs more recruiting, more training, more equipment in order to do so. And most of all, this army should be, the recruiting of the army and the structure of the army should represent the national interest for the common Iraqis.
Thank you, Mr. Samarra'i. After the break, I will ask Dr. Buthaina Sha'ban if she thinks the U.S. is sincere about resolving the Arab-Israeli struggle, or has it lost its influence over Israel? Stay with us. One thing I won't do, I'm not going to pull the troops off the battlefield before the mission is complete. The defiant President Bush is speaking in Riga, Latvia.